Have we given up on Tre Johnson yet? With us kind of declaring the Hornets need to draft VJ Edgecombe. We'll get to that, plus another mock draft, and we have plenty of questions in the Sicko Satchel, all today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also Locked On NBA, Matt Moore, and Hayes is who he hosts alongside. Something different happened? Doug, you stopped me. What's going on?
So, pulling back the curtain a little bit, before we ever jump on the air, Walker and I usually spend some time before the show. Well, we spend a lot of time before the show in our rundown, like talking about what we're going to talk about. But then right before we come on, we really solidify what we're going to talk about. Literally, as soon as I hit record and you started your cold open, I remembered that yesterday, and I don't know if it's aired yet, but I did a longer interview with Locked On Kings on trading LaMelo Ball. So maybe we don't talk about it today because I'm just throwing this at you right now, but maybe we talk about that tomorrow. Maybe that leads the show tomorrow because I don't even know if it's aired on Locked On Kings, but boy, we went through all the scenarios. So check out that interview on Locked On Kings, but maybe you and I discuss it tomorrow.
Yeah, we can. I mean, I can either watch it or we can just talk about it now. I don't know. This is all throwing me in a tizzy.
No, let's stick to the plan. Let's stick to the plan. But go watch the interview. I'm telling you, Walker, go watch the interview later today, and then we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Now I have homework. Is that what you just did to me? All right. Fine. I'll watch your freaking interview. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. First off, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I'm really interested in this LaMelo stuff, but we'll stick to the script. I promise we're going to stick to it. Have we given up on Tre Johnson? I think it's a good question because we did just talk about officially, at least I did. I don't know if you agree with it. I guess you'll share that here in the first segment, but I pretty much am saying I'm in on VJ Edgecombe as the 4th overall pick. I like the defense. I like the identity that he brings. I think he's got upside offensively. We have a month until the Hornets are going to make their selection, so we can continue to dig into all of the analytics and everything as to what I like about VJ defensively. And again, even when he has the ball in his hands, which there are some question marks there, but there are reasons to believe in him. So I get the question, have we given up on Tre Johnson? For me, no, I would say I have not given up on Tre. We got to make a pick. We can do this thing where we throw all these names out here and say, I really like him. I really like him. I really like this guy. When it's draft time, you can't pick all of them. You can't. You got to pick one. And so while I like Tre Johnson still a lot, there's a lot of things that he can bring to the table, and maybe we can start to do player capsules in the form of prospects where we just have a whole show dedicated to one guy individually rather than just these segments or whatever. But there are a lot of things that Tre Johnson can help an NBA basketball team with. But when it comes to actually making the pick, I'm leaning VJ. I would not say that I've given up on Tre Johnson as that guy for the Hornets, though, if he is the pick. It's just not the guy that I'm selecting.
So the context behind this segment is that I was perusing the Charlotte Hornets Reddit, as I am wont to do, and I read this post from Dan of the Cloth. He said, VJ is fit, Con is safe, Ace is a home run swing, but why can't Trey be the best balance of all three? Tall guards who can dribble, pass, and shoot are hard to find. He led the SEC in scoring with horrible coaching and talent around him. NBA spacing will unleash this dude. He fits because he can play off ball or off screens, pin downs. He and Miller will create so much gravity to attack. He can also handle and is a better athlete and passer than you think. He has a bag and he's just 19. I'm concerned about three skinny guys with Melo and Miller, which is also why I'm down on Ace. I'm concerned about the defense. To me, he has more upside than VJ or Khan, yet he's safer and a better fit than Ace. I don't understand why more people aren't talking about Trey over VJ or Ace. Well, I certainly was talking about it early on, and I still, if you took me out of the vacuum of what the Hornets situation is, and I don't just mean what they need positionally, but what they need in terms of attitude, in terms of culture, in terms of a reaction to maybe last year's pick, which was a raw prospect swing pick, the reaction to that being a little bit of a safer pick that, like, VJ to me is a guy I think will be a role player plus, has a little bit of star potential, but it's more remote, I think, than some of the other prospects that are being thrown around. But man, he can be a solid role player that I'm seeing win playoff basketball teams or win playoff basketball games for teams like Indiana, like in the few games that Minnesota won against the Thunder and the Thunder. They are using those type of role players to win basketball games. And I know people don't like that in the top 5, but that's just kind of a reality sometimes. Sometimes it's your 4th in a 3-player draft, and that's where we are. And I haven't given up on Trey. I'm out on Ace, but if Trey was the pick, I could make a justification for Trey, a more polished shooter, a different kind of scorer, a more polished scorer than VJ for sure, a different kind of scorer than VJ. So yeah, I don't think I'm out on Tre Johnson either. But I think you and I, we're both gravitating around VJ because the defense and the athleticism. I hate drafting for need, but the Hornets need that more than they need. They can go find some shooting somewhere. Defense and athleticism at that level that VJ is showing is really tough to find.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be sacrificing the best player available if I didn't think VJ could be that with that selection, right? Like I'm not.
It's too even. That's right. That's what we're saying, right? They're too even to say, oh, you have to take the best player available. You can't. Like, you could argue that, from here to eternity. That's not the case here.
Yeah, and so you might believe that Trey has a chance to be best player among these 3 guys that are going to be in consideration. Khan, if you want to bring him in as well. I mean, all of them could be. It's who do you believe is going to be? Is it even enough for you to just go ahead and select the guy that fills the needs and checks off the boxes? And VJ Edgecombe, he's that guy to me. And I do wonder how much I've been influenced by watching this postseason, because you just rattled off all the teams. Who are the role players that one of these prospects fits the mold best? And I think it's VJ. Like, is VJ Edgecombe just going to go out there and be Cason Wallace? Is he going to go out there and be Alex Caruso? And you mentioned it. I'll take Caruso. You said it, and I didn't laugh, but I was like, I'd rather have somebody with a little more star power than Caruso. But with all that being said, all Caruso has done since then is just be the fourth best player on Oklahoma City after the big 3 with that Thunder squad. And then they have a whole bunch of other VJ Edgecombes running around and then wreaking havoc all over the place. I want one of those guys. It's like you go to your buddy's house and they got a whole bunch of dogs, and their dog actually just had a litter of puppies, and then all the cute little puppies are running around and they're vicious and they're teething and they're mouthing, but it's a lot of fun. I want one of those little puppies, and VJ Edgecombe is a puppy.
Give me that dog. That's my dog. Yeah, no. So I think that he could even be like an Aaron Nesmith if he improves his shooting. I mean, guy that guards with his chest, and and he can get bigger. That's the thing. When I look at Tre Johnson, I see somebody that is also mature, that could also be a culture raiser as he matures and develops his own game. I don't see that as much with Ace Bailey. I think he's the kind of guy that comes in and will want to take over a locker room for better or worse. So, but when I look at their body types, I see in VJ a guy that can get bigger. Tre Johnson, I have questions. I just think the frame is such that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this guy can really fill out. So, and maybe he can. And that's, a lot of this is where we're trying to game out what this player is going to be like 4 or 5 years from now. But like, I think VJ Edgecombe can do that. I think he can get bigger, and he's already explosive now. And yeah, but we should, I have a clip here. If you want to play a clip from the Locked On Longhorns podcast and see if he can convince us if the pick should be Tre Johnson. Let's take a listen to that.
All right, let's go to the clip.
Tre Johnson is a walking bucket. What's up, guys and gals? BK with Locked On Longhorns here, telling you about maybe the best scorer in this year's draft, Tre Johnson, as a true freshman, led the SEC in scoring a season ago, averaging close to 20 points per game. Remember, the SEC, the best conference in college basketball history this past year. Tre Johnson stood alone atop the league. He is a true three-level scorer. He can hit threes. He can make from the mid-range. He can slash and finish at the 10 as well. He's also a great free throw shooter to boot. This game has always been about getting buckets, and Tre Johnson can get you some buckets. He's an emotional player. He wears his heart on his sleeve, but man, when he gets hot, he is tough to stop, and he is going to make one fan base very, very happy at the next.
Okay, so yeah, that's the MO on Tre Johnson, is that he can get his offense easily just an ISO. I wouldn't call him a three-level scorer yet.
Me neither. See, that's where I think that now I will agree that there are some things I think that we didn't see in his game, or that maybe we saw him struggle with, that he could be better at the next level, because that situation for him at Texas was weird. But the three-level scoring piece is not there for me, because I think he lacks the strength to finish through contact at the rim. And so I think he's going to be a shooter, particularly early in his career. He's going to be a shooter.
So and I got some analytics pulled up on Tre Johnson. So at the rim, he finished well enough. He just didn't shoot there a lot, but he finished 63.7% at the rim, according to College Basketball Analytics. That was in the 70th percentile. It's pretty good, honestly. Problem is, he took less than 3 field goal attempts per 40 minutes at the rim,
right?
And the percentage of shots that he takes, that's in the 24th percentile. Doug, you know what's interesting? As he is a guy that we consider a three-point shooter, he took a lot of his shots in the mid-range. In fact, he was in the 99th percentile in mid-range twos in terms of what the percentage of his total shot chart was. He was in the 20 of it. A fifth of his shots were actually in the mid-range, which, again, like, we're in this weird balance of, Brandon Miller didn't take any shots in the mid-range back at Alabama. I think 5% of his shots actually came in the mid-range. And then he graduates to the NBA, and actually we started to see that more. And people were telling us that Brandon Miller actually had that a part of his game going all the way back to high school, but it was taken out once he went to Tuscaloosa in that NBA offense that Nate Oates runs down there with the Crimson Tide. So, okay, I actually like that Trey has the mid-range in his bag, and he was efficient at it decently enough, 68th percentile in terms of efficiency. The corner threes were great from Trey. It's a clean shooting chart from what you see from him, but that's the thing, right? I do like his handle. That's actually a big deal to me. And if you were to convince me that Tre Johnson is the guy over VJ Edgecombe, you really could start there. Not only could you start with the shooting, which is that's what everybody is going to point to, but the handle is another place that you could point to, and then that would carry some real weight with me. So I really like that as well, and I do think he's got some passing chops. So, yeah, I've not given up on Tre Johnson. I could easily be talked into him if the Hornets select him. It's just the other end of the floor that I value a lot, and what this team needs, and honestly, I guess what a lot of postseason teams have needed on their way to a conference finals appearance.
Not only what they need, but what I want this franchise to continue to value, because just over and over I'm seeing in the playoffs what kinds of players make the best impact, make the most impact, the kind of players that help you win. And I think VJ is the closest to being that right now, and then can continue to develop those skills, whereas Trey has some catching up to do on the defensive end of the floor.
Let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
I still love you, Trey!
Yeah, I do too. Maybe just not as much. All right, we have Sicko Satchel questions coming up next, as well as another mock draft. We're in the 40s, folks. That means we're getting closer. All still to come. LOH. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order at $20 or more. Use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this deal and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 plus order and code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Before we open up that satchel, do you have any other thoughts on Tre Johnson and other clips, other goodies that you brought? I didn't even expect a clip from the last segment.
Yeah, we got some YouTube comments to get to. I want to hop back in the big board time machine, and I want to go back as far as humanly possible. And when I say humanly possible, I mean as far back as we have Ringer draft guides to go to. It's going to be a painful year. It's hard not to be a painful year when you're talking about Hornets draft history. So stay tuned for that. But we have a lot of resources here at the Locked On Podcast Network when it comes to the NBA draft. And one of them is the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. It's fantastic. In fact, I think their latest episode talks a lot about Tre Johnson versus Ace Bailey, which I find funny. Oh, I think they're doing it in reference to the third pick by Philadelphia. Like, who should Philly take? Should it be Tre Johnson? I just love that VJ Edgecombe is so locked into the Hornets at 4 that people aren't even considering VJ Edgecombe at 3. Poor VJ. He's going to lose money because people are so locked into VJ at 4 to the Hornets.
Well, and it's a good point because was it Jeremy Woo? I forget who said it, but somebody said Philly might just be deciding between VJ Edgecombe and Con Knipple over Ace Bailey. I forget who said it, but yeah. Okay, interesting.
It's crazy, but I think the scarier thing for the Hornets, if they do want VJ Edgecombe, is not that the Philadelphia 76ers would take VJ. It's that someone would trade up and say, I want that defense. I want that athleticism. I want some of those measurables that came out at the combine. And I know the Hornets are interested, so I'm going to skip the line and move up above them. So it's going to be very interesting to see if the Hornets want to move to 3 to make sure they get their guy, or if they look at this situation like a lot of us are looking at it and saying, well, Tre Johnson, VJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey slides, Con Knipple as a backup plan, like all of you're not in a bad place. That's why when people were so down that the Hornets got 4th, I was like, guys, I made this comparison on that Kings podcast. I said, we're lucky. We are the action star that grabbed the last rock on the cliff as the Utah Jazz and the New Orleans Pelicans and the Washington Wizards all fell off the cliff, went flying over our heads. We grabbed the last rock, and that last rock is going to be a solid wing player for this franchise. And Rafael Barlow of NBA Big Board, he's got his Big Board 4.0 out. He has Tre Johnson 5th on that big board. He has VJ Edgecombe 6th. In 4th, he has Jeremiah Fears, which I don't think will be an option for the Hornets unless they were to suddenly move on from LaMelo Ball, maybe to the Sacramento Kings, like we talked about in that Locked On Kings episode. But it's Ace Bailey, then Jeremiah Fears, then Tre Johnson, then VJ Edgecombe. Con Knipple 10th. Your guy Max Reynaud 12th.
Loves Reynaud. Yeah, I know about Barlow's love for Reynaud as well. Okay, VJ Edgecombe is 6th on that list, so a little bit away from consensus. Knipple being 10th too. That strays from consensus also. All right, where do you want to go next here, Doug?
Let's hop in the big board time machine and go all the way back to the year of 2017. And not only are we going to get Kevin O'Conman, but we're also going to get Danny Chow, who I think is very smart. The late Jonathan Sharks is also on this. And so we get 3 big boards for one. And this was the year of Markelle Fultz, of Jason Tatum, of Lonzo Ball, of De'Aaron Fox, of Jonathan Isaac. This was the year that the Charlotte Hornets selected Malik Monk, who on Kevin O'Conman's big board was 7th, supremely athletic scorer who, while undersized as a 2, has tools to grow into a point guard, which is interesting, point guard, because I don't think, when I think back to us analyzing that draft pick, I don't think you or I were really thinking point guard.
Well, I wasn't on the pod yet. So that was you and David Walker. This is going all the way back. And I remember we talked, and in fact, you want to go back in our time machine. My first appearance ever was when you brought me on and we talked about Malik Monk after the selection was already made. And I remember my take at the time. My take was that if the Hornets have been without star power for quite some time, this was the guy that brought the most star power that was available at the time. Clearly, that was not the case with Donovan Mitchell, who would be selected a couple spots later. But this is a super interesting draft pick because this was the last one that Rich Cho would ever make. He felt like it was his decision, and it was. Like, I understand the process behind selecting Malik Monk. If you're Rich Cho, where Malik does fall a few spots because we all expected him to go to the Knicks, but they take Frankie Smokes, which that was somehow that was a worse pick than what the Hornets made. But they draft Frankie Smokes, so Malik Monk drops a few spots. Rich Cho and Steve Clifford, they battle for their guy. Rich Cho wants Malik. Steve Clifford wants Donovan Mitchell. Well documented. Like, it's on solid ground that was the case. Rich says, my job's on the line. I got to go out swinging with my guy. And he did. He went out and he went with his guy in Malik Monk, while Donovan Mitchell immediately made an impact with the Utah Jazz. Denver Nuggets also at fault too, if you'll remember. They made that pick and they traded Donovan, very much Hornets SGA style trade, with Denver sending Donovan Mitchell to Utah. But that's how it all unfolded back in 2017.
Yeah, so you have to understand the context too, which was that they make the playoffs in 15-16. They come off that year. They trade out of the first round in the next draft. That was Malachi Richardson, a Syracuse product. They traded that to Sacramento. That's in fact, I think the last time they traded completely out of the first round was after that playoff season, because they were. And
you know who they got, right? They got your guy. You remember who they got in that trade? It was Marco Bellinelli.
Oh yeah, Bellinelli, who blocked us on Twitter because I called his defense potted plant.
That's right.
Bellinelli. Yep, that was the deal. I thought you meant who did they get who did Sacramento get in the draft? And I was like, I'm pretty sure it was Malachi Richardson. Right?
It was. Yeah. It was Malachi Richardson as the pick for Marco Bellinelli, and Bellinelli was here for a year, some change. That was about it, and then they moved on. So
right. Well, because that year wasn't what they wanted it to be. The Hornets, I don't think the Hornets didn't want to spend the money to bring that entire team back that took Miami to 7, that almost got into the second round. They didn't want to spend the money to bring all of those players back. And so then they tried to piecemeal some stuff together, particularly at the center position, because you had Big Al aging out, and there were some experiments that went pretty terribly wrong. And so they find themselves back into the lottery. And I think Cho was thinking, got to find some star power, particularly to replace what I think was one of the engines of that playoff season, which was Jeremy Lin. Like, Jeremy Lin's ability to attack, score, and bring some bench production, particularly when Kemba was off the floor, but even those two guys playing together. Like, you could envision Kemba, Monk, that tandem in a same way that you could envision the Linsanity of that 15-16 season. So they wanted to recreate that, and it just never materialized.
Yeah, so, and you know my thoughts on Malik. I love Malik. He's one of my favorite players. He's still one of my favorite players over there in Sacramento. But Donovan Mitchell, clearly the right choice. And Steve Clifford made it, and Steve Clifford's been on the right side of history. Anytime we've heard his draft opinion, he's been on the right side of history. Now, Tijan Salon, he was also very much in on. So maybe this is, you got to have a miss at least somewhere. Maybe this is it. Maybe it's not. Maybe we have to wait a little longer for a Steve Clifford miss. But this is the most famous one. And again, this was the last draft pick in the first round that Rich Cho ever made, not only for the Hornets, but period. Now he's writing for food blogs with big time bites, baby.
No, he's working for the Grizzlies, I think.
Right.
Under his protege, Zach Kleiman, under his protege with the Bobcats. Zach Kleiman, I believe, was like his intern or something, and now Kleiman's running things over in Memphis. Two other interesting things from this. The mock draft has the Charlotte Hornets selecting not Malik Monk, not Donovan Mitchell, but Zach Collins, 11th. That would have been, look, man, the Malik Monk experience wasn't all that I wanted it to be, certainly. I was not a huge Malik Monk fan as it progressed, but you got a little bit more than you would have out of Zach Collins. That would have been,
for sure.
That would have been a even bigger disaster, I think.
No doubt. Well, and I will say this though, Malik left for nothing. So in a way, maybe you just would have been able to trade Zach Collins if it would have got because he got injured. I mean, that's a weird sliding doors moment that this is not one that you really hold the Hornets at fault for. It's like, oh, they should have drafted Zach Collins because they would have had a better future. What are you talking about? Zach Collins just got injured all the time. But I wondered if he's so injured at the beginning, they decide to give up on him, trade him for something rather than just to eventually lose Malik Monk for nothing. In a weird way, maybe it actually would have worked out better for him.
Well, but sliding doors, Malik Monk still would have slid himself. And then if the Hornets would have passed on both Monk, whatever happened with him, and would have passed on Donovan Mitchell, like that would have been, I think, difficult for fans to take. At least I think fans could at least lean back and go, man, think of those dunks that Monk threw down. Think of the passing that we did see develop. Like, there were some moments, and yeah, it didn't work out, but they tried. And if they had taken Zach Collins, that wouldn't have been it. The last interesting thing is that Kevin O'Connor had, and I say his name correctly because he had Jason Tatum second overall on his big board.
And he wasn't O'Con Man yet. He became O'Con Man.
That's true. But Danny Chow and Sharks had Jason Tatum, both had Jason Tatum ninth on their big board. So just understand, big boards, you never know.
You never know, man. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Mock draft, YouTube, comment section edition of the Sicko Satchel. That's still to come. Last segment, LOA. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Let me tell you, FanDuel, they got a hold of Olivia, Doug. They got a hold of my girlfriend.
Oh,
she found out that futures bets were a thing, and she
Uh-oh.
got in on the Indiana Pacers bandwagon before they started rolling with some of these Cavs wins. Big payout. And then she went back to FanDuel yesterday to say that OKC, that we're going to win game one of the finals, but the Pacers would win again. She doubled down on the Sirs. It's crazy. They got a hold of her. They got a hold of her. But it could get a hold of you too because how much fun it is. And they're offering bonus bets right now. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, finishing thoughts on the last segment, Doug. What you got?
Well, just I heard you reading that FanDuel read there, and so then my curiosity got the best of me. I wanted to see if FanDuel had any lines on the fourth pick. They don't right now, but they do have it on the number 3 overall pick. And right now, Ace Bailey is a favorite, but he's plus 100. Right behind him, nipping at the heels, is VJ Edgecombe at plus 115. So the talk may be Ace Bailey versus Tre Johnson to Philly, or Ace Bailey versus Con Knipple, who is plus 850. But right now, Vegas is looking at this situation and going, VJ Edgecombe could very well be the third pick as well.
We'll have some debates. We'll give you the Ace Bailey versus Con Knipple, Ace Bailey versus Tre Johnson, Johnson versus Knipple. We'll give you all the combinations with some of those debates that we very well could have once we get to draft night. My question is, what will Shams tweet out 24 hours before the draft that alters those lines, even if they should never have been altered in the first place?
Oh boy.
That's my question.
I don't want to touch that. Gotta be careful now that I'm on Locked On NBA. I don't really want to touch that.
I'll knock on wood.
Okay, let's go to some YouTube comments because there were some debates that were thrown into that pit of, I don't know what it's a pit of. It's a pit of despair. It's not the Sicko Satchel. The Sicko Satchel is on Subtext. Join subtext.com/Locked On Hornets. That's where people submit the questions. But I think the YouTube comments are something different. That's where people go to lament. I think it's a pit of lament. It's not a pit of despair. It's a pit of lament. They go there to lament the fact that it's been 3,043 days since the Charlotte Hornets last were in a playoff series. Yes, I counted. Yes, I've lived every one of them. So here's a debate.
3,000 sounds better than I thought, honestly. Like, I'm actually okay with that. I'm fine.
3,000 days?
I was expecting
They're only
5.
365 in a year. That's 10x.
But I don't do math very well, so I was expecting 5K. Ignorance is bliss. That's what I choose to live in.
This is from @SoulInFlame6803. He asks this. He or she asks this. Do you guys think Amen Thompson is better than B. Mill so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what it is, right? I don't want it to be true, but Brandon Miller got hurt at the beginning of this year. Amen Thompson just gave you 20-point performances, except his calling card is defense. And he was still giving you 20-point performances in games that matter in the postseason, in a postseason series where, did that go to game 7? If it didn't go to game 7, it went to game 6 between the Warriors and the Rockets. I think it did go to game 7, if I'm not mistaken. It did. Yeah, it did. So in a 7-game series, and I believe in game 7, Amen Thompson actually performed very well in that last one. He was ready for all the smoke in just his second year. He's already making an all defense team. So if you're quite literally one of the 10, one of the 5 best defenders in the league, already you have to say yes. Already you have to. And so if we're talking about you as a top 5, top 10 defender in the league, and you're giving me 20-point performances in playoff games that actually matter, I just don't know if there's a legitimate case. The case is the case you could try to construct is that Brandon Miller got hurt, but you missed everything that he would have done the rest of the season. Okay, I probably need more. It doesn't mean that Brandon Miller won't pass Amen Thompson again. That is very much so on the table right now. Yeah, Amen Thompson, he was fantastic this season, and he was fantastic in the postseason.
Yeah, there's really no argument. And if you want to say, well, yeah, but Amen Thompson played on a playoff team. He played with a lot of good players, Şengün, Fred VanVleet. He had players around him. Okay, he was, I think, the one guy you looked at in those Rockets series and said, that guy is going to be their star. Like, they don't have a star player. That's their problem. Amen has the best chance to be that guy. And so he is rising above even the good players that he's playing with. And so I think, yeah, Amen Thompson better than B. Miller so far. TBD. I think some of that's up to Brandon Miller. Some of that is up to the Charlotte Hornets. This is always a complicated discussion, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's Amen right now.
Well, and the other thing is too, you might want to point to Houston, say he's playing with a lot of better players. That makes him better. Remember, the Rockets' offense, it would sputter a lot. In fact, it was their defense, led in part by Amen Thompson, and their offense would sputter. Yet here, it's not like they have Jalen Green creating a whole lot of opportunities for Amen Thompson. Fred VanVleet, good player. I don't know if I'm looking at him as this monster facilitator that's really helping everybody get open and putting these guys in the best situations. Şengün is their best passer, which is why they run their offense through Şengün in the high post, and then he can cut. Okay, fair enough. Just, you would be shielding your eyes watching Thompson play if you said anything other than he's the second best in that class, right? It's Wemby, and then it's Thompson right now. And Brandon Miller may very well pass him. Like, that's still on the table. But Thompson was incredible.
No, but he has to. And that's what's tough about him getting injured so young. And I talked about this. I know I mentioned this Kings podcast that I was on a million times, but I mentioned this on the Kings podcast as it relates to LaMelo. All of the injuries early in his career, like, I just wonder, whatever curve LaMelo was on in terms of the trajectory of his improvement and what he could be and what ceiling he could reach, how much of that was blunted? You know, how much of that then the curves just starts to flatten out a little bit because the injuries don't allow you to develop some of those skills because you're not playing games. One, I mean, it's super important, but also, you know, depending on where the injury is, it could just impact your ability to get in the lab at all and make some of these changes. And so Brandon Miller, you know, this was a big injury. How is he going to recover from that? And then if he tops it with another injury, you know, then you start to have those same concerns. So we'll see. Also, zooming out, like, why is Amen Thompson around better players? Because the Rockets were not afraid eventually to trade a superstar and get assets back. And they weren't afraid to shift their entire team focus from one thing to another thing at some point. And then they have ridden that identity. They got a coach that matches that identity. And then they drafted players that exactly fit that identity. So when Amen Thompson comes to play for the Rockets, he's not like, he's perfect. He's perfect. And he does everything that the Rockets want him to do, and everything that the Rockets do make him look better. That's what you have to do with these drafts. You have to find players that match the style of play that you want to play. You know, BPA, very important, but also you got to find a way to play and get players that match that. Otherwise, it's bad for the player and bad for the team.
All right. Do we have anything else in the, I don't know, let's call it the pit of spit, the spit pit, if you will. What you got?
I don't. We're going to continue to workshop that.
That's what we're doing, right? That's what
We're
we're
going to
calling it?
continue to workshop that, I think.
Sounds good to me.
I got to type that into Urban Dictionary. We may have just stepped in a spit of pit.
No, don't. That sounds terrible.
I don't. All right, this is from, speaking of things that sound terrible, sometimes when we get into our draft analysis and we pronounce players' names, sometimes it doesn't come out exactly right. Noah Leibovitz correcting us here on the pit of lament. I'm going to go pit of lament right now. We'll look at spit pit too. I've been saying Kalkbrenner. I've been going
Same.
Yeah. So he says it's Kalkbrenner, pronounced caulk, like the caulk that you would put in your windowsill. Caulk. And
So
I
you're
confirmed this. I went to a video
Yeah.
with an interview with him, and it's Kalkbrenner.
Caulk with the L.
Caulk.
Like it's almost like you're not fully pronouncing the L, but it's there somewhere. Like you got to look for it, bring your magnifying glass. But caulk. Like caulk. You don't, now make sure you get it in there somewhere. Kalkbrenner,
We
not
now have
calc.
a caulk and a knipple on our sites.
All right. Kalkbrenner, Konknipple. We can't go a show without saying Konknipple, actually. I don't think that's possible for us anymore. I just compared it to a twisty top Gatorade, Konknipple top Gatorade yesterday. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That does include YouTube. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also check him out on Locked On NBA. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Caulk.